Hi, this is Cajun, and it is Monday, time for our weekly conference call. Starting with the global economic landscape, we are looking at 4.4 million people that have filed for unemployment claims last Thursday. That brings the total in the U.S. to 26 million. I think there was a 10 million figure thrown around for another country, but looking at the entire global population, you could be looking at numbers in the high triple digits here in terms of unemployment. And the question is, how does this impact my industry? This is what everybody asks. How does this impact my sector or industry? That's the question of the day. And it looks as though every industry and every sector is impacted. This includes the crypto industry. And sometimes it's impacted for good, sometimes bad. We see a lot of positives among the negativity that we see here today. First, before we get into crypto, let's start with our industry, the natural language processing, dataset, AI, ML industry. For the first time, MIT has hosted the AI-powered drug discovery and manufacturing conference. And this is in direct response to the COVID-19 pandemic. This is a first, and it shows the focus that the world has taken on drug discovery, drug repurposing, drug repositioning, and finding a cure or a vaccination. Microsoft as well, another trillion-dollar organization here, released news related to researchers releasing chatbots and search engines related to evaluating COVID-19 research papers. Microsoft also released their chief technology officer pivoted to the coronavirus pandemic response. And that was the title of an article describing how Microsoft's efforts are geared toward COVID-19 and solutions. And as you know, Microsoft is one of our dataset partners. So we'll be working closely with them to let the world know about what we can do for them. On the corporate side, first, before we get into the corporate side, let's go to the crypto side. In the crypto industry, every crypto company and every crypto stakeholder, is asking a very similar question as any other company owner or investor around the world, any other traditional person, and that is, how does this affect my crypto? How does this affect my crypto company? How does this affect the crypto industry or the crypto space? The global pandemic, the coming economic waves of destruction. Well, we are taking it day by day. We are understanding that new opportunities are popping up every day for companies like ours. And when it comes to cryptocurrency in general, when it comes to job loss in general, when it comes to global unemployment numbers reaching unprecedented levels, you can be guaranteed one thing, that people need to put food on their table and pay bills. And that comes with either generating cash, but if they don't have jobs, they're not going to be able to generate cash. So they're going to have to sell assets, and that could mean cryptocurrency. We'll see about that, but we do expect a bit of a tug of war between the bid and the ask in the crypto space, where you've got a lot of individuals from the long tail looking to go cash simply to cover expenses for their operations. At the same time, we're looking at a lot of opportunists, especially those that understand the wisdom of buying when there's blood in the streets, positioning themselves now to hold large chunks or lots of crypto. And these are people that are on the buy side, on the bid side. And we're really looking at crypto as an asset class that is going to not only survive but thrive here. So we see nothing but good things ahead, of course. And then, of course, in the crypto industry, everyone's focusing on the halvening. And as we know, savvy traders and investors market participants know that the market does not move based on supply and demand. It moves based on perceived supply and perceived demand. So any perceived demand coming from the halvening will be reflected, obviously, in bid side pressure, buy pressure, and upward price movement. So we're watching that closely. We have individuals that are helping with a few things right now, and we'd like to highlight individuals such as Alex, who are helping with the funneling and the marketing and the onboarding and the conversion, Google Analytics and traffic analysis, among many other things. And we've also got Sobi working on the basket trade for the investment groups, for the investment club that we're assembling. The smart basket trade is going to be, we've made a modification to it, and it's going to be made up of biotech companies on the long and the short side. And on the short side, SPYs, the S&P, or financials, banks and so forth on the short side. On the long side would be cryptos, and VXV being one of them. We're looking to choose the best trading platform right now to get these trades executed, one with some decent margin, and this is we have to have a trading platform similar to eToro, where you can trade both cryptos and traditional equities at the same time. That's just easier for accounting and so forth. We're likely going to be looking at any platform that we're going to prioritize any platform that has an API that will allow us to plug our Smart Basket API interface in and generate smart baskets automatically based on global events. And let's see, Sobi's also working on the grant application acquisition process. So for COVID-19, there are a large number of grants out there. We're applying for them, and we also have a small task force that is constantly digging grants up for COVID-19. They're very easy to find right now because trillions have been allocated. We have everybody working on dataset, not everybody, but we have a select group working on dataset distribution, and this simply means coming up with a long list. We have a short list already of dataset distributors. A dataset distributor, for example, would be a company like Kaggle. Kaggle is owned by Google, and you've also got other companies like data.world or the Harvard Data Portal. You've got the EU Data Portal, and groups like alternativedata.org. We'll talk more about them in just a bit. So we've got other people helping. We've got Alan Walsh and CryptoJ and a few others. TikTok, Ahava, Gijpa, others helping with the grant application process and dataset distribution process when their cycles become free. We are also, this is a good segue into understanding one of our strategies in the future, and that would be enabling curators and quality assurance team members engaged in testing and QA, to also engage in dataset curation and specifically results curation. When you look at a cluster of drug compounds associated to a keyword, what we are looking at doing is creating relationship networks. These are nodes and edges, graph networks, like a cyclic directed graph, a directed acyclic graph, a DAG. When you look at a graph network, you're looking at, for example, in the center, you might have a drug compound, and you might have edges or lines that fan out that connect to, let's say, 5 other drug compounds. And you'd like to understand why those hidden relationships exist between these drug compounds. When it comes to validating a relationship, or engaging in quality assurance related to search results or recommendation results or results from a machine learning operation or natural language processing, natural language understanding operation, you really want a human in the loop process happening. And that means you want a human to be able to look at the, let's say, 10 research papers that provide evidence or strong support for there being a hidden connection between one drug compound and another. And in order for a human curator to make that connection, they'd have to read a few papers. They'd also have to highlight that connection and use a summarizer and a few other tools to quickly go through and curate relationships. So we're going to be engaging in this because one of the most important things to a researcher, of course, is validating why a relationship exists so they can determine whether or not it's wise to invest in conducting a wet bench experiment to generate more data and validate more results, prove the hypothesis. So we're looking forward at some point to, without creating a lot of cell pressure, paying people in VXV to engage in results curation, validating results. This is something that the software does, but it's much better when a human does it. On the engineering side, we have got the dataset builder up and running. That is good to go. It's been submitted to Amazon. We are waiting to hear their feedback, but we'll go over that later. The dataset builder is a user interface that we have at vectorspace.ai/covid19.html with no dash. And you'll note that you can insert up to 5 terms, keywords, or concepts, or categories, and you will have a data set generated based on drug compounds associated to those concepts in the context of COVID-19 research papers. That's how the relationships were built. The dataset builder also has an API, which we brought up. The reason that the API is so important is because you've got machine learning pipelines, data engineering pipelines out there that just need to talk to an API, grab a data set, test for results, and if the test comes back with some kind of low probability, then generate another data set. It's almost like a manufacturing pipeline. So you can churn through data sets with the API to determine if you're finding any hidden relationships or validating anything else. That's something that is unlike what any other provider is doing right now. Not only providing updated data sets, but providing an API so that you can generate your own data sets on the fly. And speaking of on the fly, that means we have on-the-fly calculations happening, which as we scale, we'll have to get rid of those. So we'll be working on the engineering level to resolve that. And on the engineering level, we've got the graph network display happening. That means after a data set is generated, you'll be able to see a relationship network or a graph network displayed, similar to vectorspace.ai/examples. That's almost done. We should have it released next week. And this connects to the product side. We usually don't have a section for products during our conference call, but we're going to go ahead and talk about one here because we have been talking about life sciences products. We've been talking about COVID-19 data sets, drug compounds associated to infectious diseases or genes or proteins related to COVID-19. When you associate drug compounds to infectious diseases or genes or proteins, you can also associate drug compounds to other drug compounds. We've got 3,900 approved drug compounds we're working with. And you can create a correlation matrix where you've got your rows made up of 3,900 drug compounds and you've got your columns made up of 3,900 drug compounds. Where if you take a drug compound from a row, select anyone, you'll be able to see how well it correlates to other drug compounds. The reason that's important is because when you have a drug compound, for example, maybe a popular drug compound, let's not name any names, but a popular drug compound today may have failed clinical trials. You might want to find one similar so that you can determine as a researcher if there's any level of efficacy related to that compound, or if it might be repurposed for something you might be working on. Or if it's a drug compound that is known to target a receptor on COVID, on the actual virus, then you're going to want to understand what other drug compounds might be targeting that same receptor or similar. You might also want, if you are a fund or an asset management company that specializes in trading pharmaceutical companies, publicly traded, you're going to want to understand which drug compounds correlate to which publicly traded pharmaceutical companies in the context of COVID-19. And you also want to know how strong those correlations are. And that's what we're going to be providing. That's actually what we provide today. We've just thrown that out there as an option on the covid19.html page. You might be wondering why a scientific researcher might be interested in understanding why a drug compound correlates to a publicly traded company, but usually that publicly traded company describes a little bit about its pipeline and its public company profile, but you might also want to know what other proteins, enzymes might be involved in this drug compound, or other analogs, variants, and so forth. So it's a good way to create a new jump-off point for research. Now, in terms of a fund or an asset manager wanting access to correlations to drug compounds, you can imagine that if a drug compound got approval for fighting COVID-19, you can bet that it's part of a cocktail, number one. That means there are other drugs involved. And there's likely going to be other drugs involved to make it more effective. So you might be interested in finding another company that might be working on a similar generic or another drug compound that has the same efficacy. And you might want to trade that drug compound. You'd be trading a smart basket, basically. A smart basket of publicly traded pharmaceuticals associated to a drug compound related to COVID-19. And that's what we're going to be talking with New Data about and alternativedata.org as we churn those data sets out. We're already churning them out. We just have to distribute them now at this point. Every data set distribution point, like data.world or Kaggle, is an opportunity for extended, ongoing PR for us. We'll also have an API, obviously, for those data sets. Another important factor to remember is that when it comes to products, we are churning out millions of data sets, not just one or two here and there. On customers, partners, and collaborators, we have added CERN as an academic collaborator. And CERN, if you're not familiar with CERN, you should look it up. It's worth taking a look at. Most people are familiar with CERN in the technology or scientific space. They're located in Geneva, Switzerland. It's one of the most complex pieces of machinery. I think it's termed the most complex piece of machinery ever built by humans, where you've got analysis of particle collisions happening, high energy physics, HEP as they call it. We have an agreement with CERN to go ahead and sponsor just a few $1,000s worth of their research while we work together with them ongoing on data sets and unsupervised learning algorithms. They produce a lot of unsupervised learning data there. Every time a particle crashes into another particle, and I'm going to explain this in layman's terms because that's pretty much the only way I can explain it. I'm not a particle physicist. But you've got a particle that crashes into another particle, and you've got new particles that burst out of that, or existing particles that burst out of that in particular patterns. Those patterns are graphed in a data set, and the data set is used to find similar particles or understand more about the particles you're witnessing, observing. So we'll be working with CERN on that, and that will be very exciting. We're happy to have Roshan as the researcher that we're sponsoring over at CERN, and we'll also be doing something that you'll find done quite a bit. Right now it's done quite a bit in industry and academia. It wasn't a few years ago, but taking an interdisciplinary approach, that means what we learn at CERN we can apply in the financial markets, we can apply in life sciences, and what we learn in life sciences we can apply to CERN. So we are looking at an extended agreement, essentially, where we can not only showcase what we do with one of the greatest scientific research institutions ever, but we can also do a lot of interesting things with data sets and provide those data sets, of course, to the world. On Amazon, we're in the queue of $1 trillion company, and that's all we're going to say now. We are in that queue, so we will see when they will begin talking about us. They have just about everything they need. We've got to go back and forth with some other people. Remember, we're dealing with a large organization, and we've got already 3 players we're dealing with there, all part of different groups. Bloomberg's Alternative Data Group. We're going to be submitting the drug compounds by pharmas. Drug compounds correlated to publicly traded pharmaceutical companies in the context of COVID-19. That's what we're going to be submitting to New Data and Bloomberg Alternative Data, their Alternative Data Group, and alternativedata.org, and a few others like S&P Global, so that companies can begin understanding how they might want to position with clusters related to these clusters of public companies related to these drug compounds. We're also going to enable the shorting of traditional equities, as mentioned earlier, and that's going to be the result of data sets we'll be distributing to Bloomberg's Alternative Data Group. On the PR and IR side, every data set is a PR. This means that every case study is a concentrated form of PR. The reason I mention that is because Amazon offered to do case studies for us. A single case study would do us wonders, obviously. And case studies at CERN as well. So we'll be looking forward to that. We'll see how far we get. And of course, no need to mention this, but we've got Microsoft and Bloomberg's journalistic group on deck as well. We haven't heard back from Bloomberg. We don't know if they're working on a larger story or what, but we'll ping our Bloomberg contact as they reached out to us initially. On the strategy side, we have got Smart Basket trade execution and management. We're going to put that basket together finally and have it executable in just about a week or so. And it'll be available to our investment club. We have also reinstantiated our dataset requests log, and this is, if you go to vectorspaceai/covid19.html, no hyphen, you'll be able to see that you can checkbox or select categories or topics that you're interested in terms of having them correlated to drug compounds in a dataset, in your dataset. This resulted in a large number of signups, so we're going to gauge what we're getting right now. We've gotten about just a handful of signups as we've made this available over the course of the last couple of days. That COVID-19.html page, by the way, is going to be our main landing page from Amazon and Microsoft, and pretty much any group that's grants included, but any group that's focused on COVID-19 efforts. And finally, when we look at what we're doing in the life sciences area, it's quite a bit different, but also the same as what we're doing in the financial area. So we have registered a domain name, vectorspacebio.science. And there, that will be the landing page for our COVID-19. More importantly, all infectious disease threats related to drug compounds and related to new research and connections that we're mining as we bring in these new papers every 24 hours. The vectorspacebio.science site, that will possibly be a spin-off of this company. That means it will have its own cryptocurrency and its own equity arm. We're analyzing that and determining the best course of action when it comes to spinning that property off. Of course, we'll need support before we spin it off, support in terms of having its own capitalization and having its own a board of directors, basically, and advisory board, and a few other things. So that's it. That wraps up our call today. If you have any questions, this is a pre-recorded call, so feel free to send those questions online to our Telegram channel. Otherwise, I will see you online. Thanks for joining. Bye.